My name is Vivian Sterling, and I'm 29 years old. I never thought a Sunday family dinner, the kind I've always attended out of obligation, would be the moment everything I built was stolen from me. The dining room in the Sterling estate was flawless as usual. Crystal glasses, cold silverware clinking softly, the chandelier glittering like ice. My father, Richard Sterling, sat at the head of the table, mother beside him. Across from me, my younger sister Olivia, dressed like a fashion magazine cover, was scrolling on her phone, half present. Then my father cleared his throat. I want to announce something important about the future of Sterling Marketing Solutions. I straightened up. Finally! I've decided to transfer 100% of the company ownership to Olivia. My hand slipped. The fork crashed onto the plate. My heart slammed against my ribs. If your family's ever erased you like you never mattered, stay with me. You're not alone. My mouth went dry. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard him correctly. Olivia, my sister who barely knew what our company even did? The sound of my fork hitting porcelain echoed in the silence. Everyone turned toward me, but no one said a word. Olivia didn't even look up. She just smirked, her thumb still gliding across her screen. "Richard," my mother said softly, not with surprise, but as if reminding him to continue. He did, calmly, like this was just a logical decision. "She has a unique vision," he went on. "It's time for the company to evolve, and Olivia represents the future." I stared at him, frozen. The chandelier above seemed to spin. My breath caught in my throat. A decade of sacrifices, late nights, missed birthdays, burnout, winning over impossible clients, all vanished with one sentence. "She's never worked a day in that office," I finally said, barely above a whisper. He didn't respond. My mother adjusted her pearl necklace, avoiding eye contact. Olivia let out a quiet laugh. "Viv," she drawled, still scrolling, "don't be so dramatic. You'll still, I don't know, manage something, if you want." Something inside me cracked. I stood up too quickly. My chair scraped the marble floor, sharp and jarring. "I'm not feeling well," I muttered, eyes burning. I didn't wait for permission. I walked, no, fled from the room, from that glittering mausoleum of lies. Outside, the air hit me like ice. I gasped, leaning on the stone railing of the veranda. The garden lights blurred in my vision. My heart pounded so loud I could hear nothing else. 10 years. I gave them everything. And in return, they handed it all to someone who never earned it, never wanted it. My mind raced. I saw the late-night meetings, the endless reports, the clients who only stayed because they trusted me. I saw my father nodding vaguely during presentations, my mother telling me to smile more, Olivia showing up late and calling our office boring. And yet, she gets it all. I wanted to scream, but instead, I stood there in silence, trembling. Then, something shifted. The ache in my chest hardened into steel. If this was what loyalty earned me, then I was done being loyal. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. The cold didn't feel so harsh anymore. That night, I submitted my resignation. No speeches, no explanations, just a quiet, final message. Effective immediately, I resign from my position at Sterling Marketing Solutions. Do not contact me again. For the first time in years, I chose myself. Sometimes I wonder when I became the second choice. Maybe I always was, and it just took me years to realize it. My 8th birthday was the first time I truly noticed. I had begged for the Lego Dream Home set, spent weeks talking about it, tracing the edges of the catalog page, imagining all the rooms I'd build. The night before, I could barely sleep. I kept picturing myself constructing each floor, laying bricks like some tiny architect with big dreams. The gift I got instead? A typing tutor machine. "It's practical," my dad said. "You're a big girl now. Time to get ahead of the curve." I smiled, or tried to. I nodded and thanked them, but my fingers clenched the side of the box too tightly. Something shifted in me that day, like a small tear in fabric that would only grow with time. Fast forward 2 years, Olivia turned 6. She mentioned in passing that she liked puppies. That weekend, they brought home Bella, a purebred poodle with a pink bow and a name tag that sparkled. Mom was ecstatic. Dad took videos. Olivia squealed and giggled as Bella licked her cheek. No one asked if I wanted to hold the dog. I wasn't even in the pictures. I stood in the doorway, invisible, while they celebrated her joy like it was sacred. That's how it was, always. When I got sick, they checked my temperature and told me to get rest. "You've got school tomorrow," Mom would say, handing me plain porridge and closing the door. When Olivia so much as sneezed, the house turned into an emergency room. Thermometers, soup, blankets, lavender oil, cartoons, and someone holding her hand all night. Once I stayed home with a high fever, alone, quiet. A few weeks later, Olivia caught a cold, and they let her sleep in my room because it had the softer light. The message was clear. I was the strong one. And strong people don't need softness. I learned not to cry. I learned to keep my voice steady. I became the responsible daughter, the mature one, the achiever. And I worked hard for those titles. In school, I brought home straight A's, spelling bee ribbons, regional math competition trophies. I practiced speeches until midnight, led school committees, tutored classmates. "Good job," my father would say without looking up. "Keep it up." Then one afternoon, Olivia, 9 years old, came home with a finger painting of a lopsided cat. Mom gasped like she was seeing a lost Monet. "Sweetheart, you're so talented," she said, hugging Olivia. "This is going on the fridge." My science trophy had been taken down the day before to make room for a coupon magnet. I stopped hoping for applause after that. I aimed for silence. No response was better than being overlooked in favor of scribbles and cute comments. At family gatherings, I'd hear my parents talk about Olivia's spark, her natural charisma, her light. When people asked about me, the praise was functional. "Vivian, oh, she's focused. She's got her head on straight. She'll be useful in the company someday." Useful, not brilliant, not vibrant, just efficient. Like a printer. The older I got, the more obvious it became. At 13, I won the county-wide essay contest. My teacher called my writing beyond high school level. Mom skimmed the piece and said, "Make sure your handwriting is neater next time." But when Olivia got a participation ribbon for a dance recital she barely remembered the steps to, they threw a dinner party. "She's a natural performer," Dad beamed, "born to lead." I began to feel like a ghost with a resume. Someone they kept around because I made life easier, not because they loved who I was. At 15, I overheard Mom on the phone with Aunt Marianne. "Vivian? Oh, she's the responsible one. Always doing something useful. But Olivia, she just lights up a room, you know? People love her instantly." People loved Olivia because they were told to. I had to earn my keep. Every single smile, every scrap of praise. I had to work for it like it was currency. And still, it was never enough. One afternoon, I walked into the living room to find my parents helping Olivia rehearse lines for a school play. She had a single line as tree number 3, and she couldn't stop giggling. "Don't worry," Mom said, gently brushing Olivia's hair. You're perfect just the way you are. Perfect just the way you are. I carried that sentence with me for years, not because it was beautiful, but because I'd never heard it directed at me. At 16, I landed an internship with a local business accelerator. I remember rushing home, full of adrenaline. They only picked 3 students from the whole city, I told Dad, and I was one of them. He looked up from his paper and said, "Make sure it doesn't interfere with your schoolwork." No pride, no hug, just a warning. Later that night, I heard Olivia laughing in the kitchen. She'd baked cookies from a box mix, burnt at the edges, undercooked in the middle. Mom gushed over her. "You're so talented, honey. Maybe you should be a chef." I sat on the stairs, holding my internship acceptance letter, and quietly folded it in half. If there's one thing I regret, it's not seeing the truth sooner. For 10 years, I gave everything to Sterling Marketing Solutions. I started fresh out of college, no gap year, no rest, just straight into the trenches. While Olivia flew to Bali to find herself, I was stuck in a gray office building at 7 a.m., organizing client folders and rewriting outdated pitch decks. I didn't mind, not at first. I told myself it was what real leaders did. That hard work would eventually speak louder than charm. And for a while, it almost felt like it did. I became the go-to person. When things broke, I fixed them. When clients panicked, I calmed them. When deadlines loomed, I delivered. My desk light was always the last one off in the building. I took pride in that. There was one night in particular. It was well past midnight. I hadn't eaten in hours, and my eyes burned from staring at spreadsheets. But I stayed to overhaul our onboarding process, because the old system was costing us leads. The next morning, I walked into my dad's office with the full plan printed, highlighted, and annotated. He looked up, nodded, and said, "Okay, try it out. Let's see if it works." That was it. No, thank you. No, this is impressive. Just next. Another time, I landed Prescott Holdings. Jonathan Prescott was infamous for shredding junior executives in meetings. I had studied every angle, anticipated every question. He tested me hard, but I stood my ground. I earned his respect. By the end of that meeting, he shook my hand and said, "You know your stuff. I like that." He signed. I remember walking out of the building feeling 10 feet tall. I had just brought in the firm's largest account to date. That night at dinner, I shared the news with my parents. We got Prescott, full partnership. My father took a sip of his wine and said, "Don't get too comfortable, keep them happy." My mother glanced at her phone and asked, "Does he have any sons?" It was like trying to pour champagne into a cracked glass. No matter how much you give, it never fills. Meanwhile, Olivia floated in and out of the company like it was a hobby. She'd show up in oversized sunglasses, latte in hand, asking if we could rebrand using astrology aesthetics. She once called a quarterly report too wordy and suggested we make it more vibey. My father chuckled. She brings a fresh perspective. I spent nights perfecting KPIs and forecasting models. She suggested switching our font to something more playful. Guess which one got the applause? One afternoon, I overheard her saying to a junior employee, "I'm like kind of co-running things now." She laughed like it was a joke. Maybe it was, except it wasn't. Months passed, the company kept growing, but something inside me began to shrink. My name was never on the press releases. Olivia's was. At investor dinners, I was seated near the end of the table, while Olivia was front and center, laughing with people she couldn't even name the week before. Then came the night that broke me. After a long day of meetings, I stopped by my father's office to drop off reports. His assistant wasn't there, and the door was open. Sitting on his desk was a folder, plain, thick, unsealed. I don't know why I opened it. Maybe I already knew. Maybe part of me was ready to shatter. Inside, official documentation to transfer full ownership of Sterling Marketing Solutions to Olivia Sterling, effective immediately. No co-signers, no mention of my name. It didn't even surprise me. Not really, it just confirmed everything I hadn't wanted to admit. I closed the folder, quietly walked out, and drove home in silence. That night, I didn't eat. I didn't shower. I sat at the edge of my bed, still in my blazer, staring at the floor like it might offer some kind of explanation. 10 years. 10 years of missing birthdays, of sleeping in the office, of showing up when no one else did. 10 years of being the safe bet, the hard worker, the one who could be counted on but never celebrated. And now, I wasn't even considered. I looked around my apartment, the one I barely decorated because I was always at work. There were no framed photos, no warmth, just folders, reports, and the scent of dry cleaning. I thought about all the times I let myself believe I was building something. That if I stayed patient, stayed loyal, it would be my legacy too. But it was never mine. Not really. The company, the family, the recognition, it had always been meant for her. I was just the scaffolding they used to hold it all up until she arrived. There was a moment, maybe 30 seconds, where I felt like I couldn't breathe. Not out of panic, but because the grief sat too heavy in my chest. The grief of being invisible. I walked to the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror, and didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked tired, like she hadn't been seen in a decade. And then, for the first time in years, I let myself whisper the truth out loud. They don't love you, they just use you. I thought the words would destroy me, but they didn't. They freed me. The next morning, I submitted my resignation. No dramatic confrontation, no speech, just a short professional email and a folder of documents left on my desk. I didn't tell them in person. I didn't owe them that. Because if they could erase me in silence, I could leave in silence too. The first morning after I resigned, I didn't set an alarm. It didn't matter. I was wide awake by 6. I just lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the usual anxiety to kick in. The rush to beat traffic, the unread emails, the 9 a.m. numbers check. But there was none of that, just silence. You'd think it would feel liberating, but it didn't. It felt empty. For the first time in 10 years, I had nothing to prove. And I had no idea what to do with that. I got up, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone like it had betrayed me. No pings, no crisis texts, no "can you jump on a call" from Dad. Just an empty screen, a blank schedule. I cleaned my apartment. I reorganized the spice rack. I vacuumed the vacuum cleaner. But still, nothing felt real. Nothing felt mine. The quiet was too loud, and under it all, something was starting to rot. Not fast, just enough to make everything feel off. On day 3, I opened a blank Google Doc and titled it Project Ideas. Then I sat there, staring at the cursor for an hour. It blinked. I didn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking about the office, about the way Olivia used to stroll in late, iced matcha in hand, talking about rebranding energy like she was some sort of marketing shaman, and how I used to roll my eyes until I realized she was the one being groomed to take over. It should have made me angry, but all I felt was tired. The next day, I went for a walk just to feel like I was doing something. I passed by a cafe where I used to have breakfast meetings. No one recognized me. No one waved. I bought a muffin, I didn't eat it. That evening, I finally opened the texts from a few old coworkers. Some were vague. Heard what happened. Hope you're okay. Others were more honest. Things are a mess without you. Olivia's already lost one account. Prescott pulled out. Thought you'd want to know. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt a weird ache in my chest, like watching someone wreck a house you built with your bare hands, but you're not allowed to stop them. I turned off my phone and didn't touch it for 2 days. Then came Tuesday, gray skies, constant drizzle, the kind of rain that makes the world feel smaller, like it's closing in. I sat on the couch in the same sweatshirt I'd worn all weekend, staring out the window, like I was expecting an answer to fall from the sky. I wasn't okay, but I didn't know how to admit that to myself, let alone anyone else. And then my phone rang. Isabelle Dubois. I stared at her name for a full 10 seconds before answering. Isabelle had been a mentor to me years ago, sharp, intimidating, elegant in the way that made men nervous and women listen. We hadn't talked in months. "Vivian," she said, "I heard." Just that. No sugarcoating, no sympathy baked into fake concern. "I'm fine," I lied. "No, you're not," she replied calmly. "And that's okay, but I didn't call to coddle you. I called because you're not the kind of woman who disappears after a knockdown. You're the kind who rebuilds." I didn't speak. She let the silence sit, then said, "They underestimated you. That's their mistake. But you, don't you dare start underestimating yourself." The tears came before I could stop them. "I gave them everything," I choked out, "and they didn't even see me." "I know," she said, "and they won't, because they don't want to. But the rest of the world isn't them." She took a breath. "I've been following your work for years, Prescott, the turnaround strategy for Cosford. You don't just build campaigns, Vivian. You build structures people trust. I want to talk about what's next. For you, really for you." My throat tightened. "You want to work with me?" "I want to listen," she said, "and then maybe we build something better. But only if it starts with you. Not Sterling, not legacy, you." That night, I sat at my desk again, the same one I used to work from till 3 a.m., for a family who barely knew what I did. This time, I wasn't formatting a report. I was just writing, messy, unfiltered thoughts, ideas I'd buried for years under other people's expectations. At the top of the page, I wrote, "What if the things they ignored are exactly what make me powerful?" And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt dangerous. It's strange how quickly the absence of something makes space for something new. After years of chasing the approval of people who never really saw me, I found myself surrounded by those who did, and who never made me beg for it. It started with Sophia. I showed up at her apartment the night after my call with Isabelle. I didn't text first. I just rang the bell with no plan and no words, hoping that friendship could survive silence. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and said, "Okay, get in here." No questions, no small talk, just warmth. We ended up in her living room, me curled up in her oversized hoodie, hair a mess, makeup smudged from crying. Sophia placed a steaming mug of cocoa in front of me, like it was a prescription. "I don't want to talk," I said quietly. "You don't have to," she replied. We sat in that quiet for a while, and then, without meaning to, I talked anyway. It poured out. The betrayal, the exhaustion, the way I had convinced myself that if I just worked harder, they'd finally love me. I didn't try to make it sound noble. I told her about the nights I cried in the office bathroom, about the way Olivia used to mock my blazer collection, About how Mom once called me a bit intense when I presented a full strategic rollout over Christmas dinner. Sophia didn't interrupt. When I finished, she wiped her eyes and said, "You've been drowning in a family that taught you to think breathing was selfish. That broke me. And then it saved me." The next morning, we started building. At first, it was just brainstorming, sticky notes, mind maps, whiteboards, but it grew. And it felt different this time. Not like proving myself, more like becoming myself. Sophia saw possibilities I'd buried. "You know this industry better than anyone under 40, she said. "Actually, scratch that. You know it better than anyone, period." We laughed a lot during those days, not because everything was okay, but because it was the first time in years I felt like I had nothing to lose. Then Isabel stepped in like clockwork. She invited me to lunch at a quiet French bistro. No press, no performative praise, just her, a legal pad, and that razor-sharp stare of hers. "You're talented," she said, "but that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I see fire in you. And fire like that shouldn't be wasted on people who don't know how to hold it." She asked about my ideas. I gave her 5. She poked holes in 3, challenged 2, told me 1 was brilliant. We began meeting regularly. Isabel never sugarcoated things. She called out my blind spots, held me accountable. But more than that, she respected me. And that felt revolutionary. One night, after a strategy session, she looked at me and said, "You realize you're not broken, right? You were just in the wrong environment." That line hit harder than I expected. I wasn't broken. I wasn't too much. I wasn't a disappointment. I was simply in the wrong room. With Sophia and Isabel in my corner, I started sketching out the foundation of something new. A boutique consultancy, small, sharp, values-driven. A place where the work mattered and the people were seen. And then Jonathan Prescott reached out. The subject line of his email was 1 word. "Ready?" He didn't waste time. We jumped on a call and he got straight to it. "I've seen what's going on at SMS, he said. "It's a train wreck." I raised an eyebrow. "Subtle," he cracked a smile. "No point sugarcoating it. I gave that business to your family because of you, not because of your last name. Without you, their value dropped like a rock." I swallowed. So I want in," he said. "Wherever you're going, whatever you're building. Prescott Holdings will follow. Hell, we'll invest if you let us." My stomach dropped. "You'd really put money behind me?" Jonathan leaned back in his chair. "Vivian, I already did. You just didn't realize it because someone else cashed the check. This time I'm making it explicit." That moment did something to me. For so long I'd measured my worth by how useful I was to people who never truly valued me. Now here was a client, one of the toughest, most respected names in the field, telling me I was the reason the business ever mattered. I wasn't just enough. I was the reason. After the call, I sat in stunned silence for a few minutes. Then I pulled out my notebook and scribbled in all caps, "If they couldn't see me, it's because they refused to look." I met Sophia at our usual cafe that night. I told her everything. She didn't look surprised. "You were never just a piece in their puzzle," she said. "You were the whole damn picture." We clinked our mugs together like it was champagne. We talked about company names, logos, mission statements. But beneath all the strategy, I could feel something more powerful forming. A version of me that wasn't surviving. One that was building. By the end of the week, I had a name, a plan, and, most shockingly, peace. Not the fake kind that comes from suppressing chaos. The real kind. The kind that comes from being seen. It started with rumors. A few texts from old coworkers, a LinkedIn post about a client account quietly ending, a whispered comment in a group chat I forgot I was still in. Then came the flood. Olivia missed 3 meetings in 1 week. Client renewal rates are tanking. Prescott Holdings is gone, and now Cosford might follow. The board's panicking. Have you heard from them? I hadn't, not yet, but I knew it was coming. Sure enough, 2 days later, my phone rang. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen since the night he gave my company to someone else, Richard Sterling. I let it ring once, twice. Then I picked up, Vivian. His voice was tight, overly formal. I could tell he was trying not to sound desperate. That made it worse. There's been some instability at the firm, he said, like he was reading from a press release. Temporary, of course, but we, your mother and I, believe that your experience could be valuable in helping us weather the current situation. I didn't speak, just let him squirm. He continued. We'd like to invite you back in an interim capacity, just until things stabilize. I almost laughed. Invite me back, like I'd been on vacation. What happened to Olivia? I asked. She's still learning, he replied quickly. She has potential, but she lacks your discipline, your command. Now he wanted my command? The same command he dismissed as too intense. Unbelievable. And what exactly are you offering? There was a pause. We're open to discussions, partial ownership, some influence on operations, nothing formal, but I hung up. 3 hours later, my mother called. She opened with, Sweetheart, I know this is difficult to hear. I put her on speaker and poured myself coffee. She rambled about Olivia being overwhelmed, about my father not sleeping, about how the family needs you right now, how we all make mistakes, and how blood is thicker than water. I wanted to scream. They hadn't called me when they made the decision. They hadn't checked on me after I left. Now when the house was on fire, they wanted the daughter they never protected to grab the hose. My mom's voice wavered. Do it for the company, for your father's legacy, for Olivia. That was the moment I realized they still didn't get it. This wasn't about a job. It wasn't even about the company. It was about power, about respect, and about how they had never, not once, treated me as someone who deserved either. I hung up again. No goodbye, no promise to think about it. Instead, I sent a text to Sophia and Isabel. We need to talk tonight. We met at Sophia's apartment, our unofficial war room. She had already laid out wine, notebooks, 3 laptops, and a whiteboard that said in big bold letters, Vivian takes control. I walked in, dropped my phone on the table, and said, They want me back. Sophia raised her eyebrows. Begging yet? Almost, I said. They're flailing. Good, Isabel said simply. Now we write the terms. Over the next 3 hours, we crafted my response, not just emotionally, but legally, strategically, surgically. Here's what we decided. I would return only under the condition of full operational control. No oversight, no co-leadership, no family interference. I would demand a minimum 85% equity stake, transferable only under my explicit approval. The current board chair, my father's longtime ally, would resign immediately. Olivia would step away from any executive position, indefinitely. Isabel refined the language. You're not asking, you're declaring, and you're bringing leverage. And I was. Prescott Holdings was already back in touch. Jonathan had made it clear, if I returned, he'd bring the business back only if I ran the show. No negotiations, he wasn't the only one. My inbox had started filling with quiet inquiries from firms I'd worked with in the past. Clients weren't loyal to the name Sterling, they were loyal to me. I held the leverage. For the first time, they needed me more than I ever needed them. We also planned the setting. No home turf, I said. Not their office, not mine, neutral ground, clean lines. We booked a private executive boardroom at a firm in Midtown. Glass walls, silent HVAC, floor-to-ceiling views. A place that didn't smell like history, just business. I spent the day before the meeting rehearsing, not what I'd say, but what I wouldn't. I wouldn't apologize. I wouldn't entertain guilt. I wouldn't let them twist this into a favor. The morning of, I wore a navy suit so sharp it could cut stone. My hair pulled back, makeup clean, no jewelry except a thin silver chain that once belonged to my grandmother, one of the few women in the family who ever told me I was enough. Sophia walked with me to the lobby. "You nervous?" she asked. "No," I said, and I wasn't. I was ready. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and I stepped into the lobby of the law firm where I'd chosen to hold the meeting. Neutral ground, no home field advantage, just sterile glass, marble floors, and silence. The assistant led me to the boardroom, top floor, private, skyline view. I arrived 10 minutes early. Always early, old habits, I guess. The room was pristine. Long table, polished wood, leather chairs, bottled water lined up like soldiers. A white orchid in the corner, the only soft thing in sight. I stood at the head of the table, not seated, not waiting, standing, grounded, ready. One by one they entered. My father came first, gray suit, forced calm, the same cologne I'd always hated. He didn't make eye contact. Then my mother, elegant but visibly tense. She smiled like she was hoping this would turn into a family dinner. And last, Olivia. She wore red, power move, but it didn't fit her. It clashed with the fear in her eyes she was trying so hard to hide. We didn't exchange greetings, just silence as they took their seats. I remained standing. "Thank you for coming," I said, voice steady. "Let's begin." My father cleared his throat. "Vivian, before we dive into proposals, we want to acknowledge that things at Sterling haven't gone as planned." Understatement of the year. "We believe," he continued, "that with your help, the company can recover. There's still room for reconciliation, for rebuilding, as a family." I tilted my head. Interesting word, rebuilding. Considering you already burned down the original structure. My mother jumped in, smiling too widely. "Sweetheart, we know emotions ran high before, but we're here now and we're open to solutions. That's what matters." Olivia scoffed. "She acts like we owe her something. She left. No one forced her." I looked directly at her. "No one needed to. You were handed everything I worked for. I just moved out of the way." "You're not the only one who sacrificed," she snapped. "You're right," I said, "but I am the only one who earned anything." I opened the folder in front of me and pulled out the proposal. Slid 3 copies across the table. My father picked his up and scanned the first page. His eyebrows rose. "Full executive control? Majority ownership?" "Yes," I replied. 85% immediate effect. All current family-affiliated board members removed. Olivia excluded from decision-making indefinitely. "That's outrageous," he said, voice hardening. "It's my offer," I said, calm. "You're welcome to decline." "This is still our family business," my mother whispered, as if saying it gently would make it true. "It stopped being a family business the day you gave it to Olivia, without even a conversation." Olivia leaned forward, her voice rising. "Why are you doing this? You're just mad you weren't the favorite. Newsflash, you're still not." I smiled slightly. "That's okay. I'm not here for favoritism. I'm here for control." She opened her mouth to speak, but I beat her to it. Jonathan Prescott has already signed a letter of intent. Prescott Holdings will return only if I take the CEO role, alone. No shared power, no strings. I slid the second document across the table. The weight of it was immediate. My father froze. My mother's lips parted in shock. "You went behind our backs," my father said, stunned. "No," I replied. "I moved forward when you stopped looking." They said nothing. I stood straighter. I rebuilt the relationships you neglected. Clients trust me, not the name. Vendors return my calls, not Olivia's. You don't have a company without me. You have a brand in free fall. "You're trying to destroy us," my mother said softly. "No," I said, eyes meeting hers. "I'm offering to save what's left." "But at what cost?" Olivia hissed. "You get everything and we get nothing?" "You got everything for free," I said. "Now you'll understand what earning looks like." My father looked older than I'd ever seen him. He leaned back in his chair and stared out the window. "This isn't how families work." "You're right," I said. "It's how business works, and you stopped treating me like family a long time ago." The room fell silent. The kind of silence that weighs on your chest. "I'll give you until end of week to decide," I added. "After that, I move forward without you." I gathered my folder, took one last look around the table, the same table where I'd once begged for scraps of recognition, and turned to leave. "Vivian," my father called after me. I stopped, hand on the door. "Why now?" he asked. "You could have moved on. Why come back at all?" I paused, then turned halfway, not to face him fully, just enough. "Because this time I'm not asking to be let in," I said. "I'm taking what I built, and I'm doing it without needing you to see me." And then I walked out. They didn't go quiet. I had hoped, naively, that after walking out of that boardroom with my spine straight and my dignity intact, they would let it go. That they would lick their wounds in silence, regroup, maybe even reflect. But no, the very same people who had once looked through me were now clawing for my attention. Dad's message came first. "Vivian, you've made your point. We all have. Now let's talk like adults." Talk like adults? He hadn't wanted to talk when he signed the company over to Olivia. He hadn't even looked up. Then Mom. "Sweetheart, I know things got tense. Your father is under pressure. You're both so strong-willed. I'm sure we can find middle ground." Middle ground. What an elegant way of asking me to give up everything I just reclaimed. I left her message unread. A little red dot next to her name, that's all. Olivia's text followed a few hours later. "You're disgusting. You smile in our faces and then go behind our backs like a snake." I almost laughed. No, actually, I did laugh. It came out sharp and unexpected. The same Olivia who smirked across the dinner table when my life was dismantled, now calling me disloyal? Poetic. Then came the second wave, longer, more emotional. A voicemail from Mom, crying this time. "Vivian, what are you doing? We're family. You're letting one disagreement ruin everything we built together." I paused the message halfway, not out of anger, just exhaustion. There was nothing left to ruin. It had already been ruined. And not by me. Thursday afternoon, Aunt Helen called. I hadn't spoken to her in months. She was Dad's sister, the family peacemaker. Her voice was syrupy sweet. "Vivi, honey, you know I love you, right?" I said nothing. "This is hard on everyone. I'm sure your parents didn't mean to hurt you. Olivia's young. She'll grow into the role." I stared out the window. "You're always the smart one, the one who sees the bigger picture. Maybe it's time to rise above." There it was, the guilt grenade wrapped in flattery. I waited. then answered simply, "No, I'm done rising above people who enjoy stepping on me." Click. I made tea after that, cleaned the apartment, sat down to write, something I hadn't done in months. No emails, no strategy decks, just a journal. I wrote about the night I stayed at the office till 3 a.m. to save a client no one remembered. I wrote about Olivia making fun of my blazer in front of the team, and how Mom later said, "Don't be so sensitive." I wrote about how I'd spent years chasing crumbs of praise like they were currency, like they meant I was real. At the bottom of the page, I wrote, "Their silence was painful, their attention is worse." That evening, Isabel called. Her tone was clipped but calm. "They'll try again," she said. "Last shot before they fold." She was right. Friday morning, 9:07 a.m., an email arrived from my father. Subject, revised proposal. He offered 40% equity, dual leadership, a compromise on the board makeup, all with one condition: Olivia stayed. I didn't respond. At 10:02 a.m., a second email came. "At least meet us halfway." At 11:45, my mother texted, "Vivian, please, don't destroy this family. We're begging you." Destroy? I hadn't destroyed anything. I had finally stopped enabling the collapse. At 12:15 p.m., I opened my laptop and typed a single reply to both parents. "The deadline remains 5:00 p.m. today. If my terms are not signed in full by then, the offer is void. There will be no further negotiation. Please direct all future communication through counsel." No signature, no warmth, just the truth. I closed my laptop, turned off my phone, and went for a walk. The city was humming, kids screaming in the park, a saxophone player on a corner I'd never noticed before, a couple arguing quietly in front of a flower shop. Everything felt ordinary, which somehow made the weight inside me settle. When I returned home, I made lunch, ate slowly, like I wasn't in a rush to prove anything. 4:56 p.m., Isabel texted me. Signed, all of it, no fanfare, no victory dance. I exhaled, not out of excitement, but relief. It was done. The next morning, I woke up to a gray sky and the smell of rain through my window. I didn't check my phone. I didn't reach for my laptop. I sat at the edge of my bed and let the silence in. It didn't scare me. It didn't feel like punishment. It felt like clarity. Later that afternoon, I met Sophia at the new office space. It was still bare walls and echoing floors, but it was ours. She brought coffee and a ridiculous potted plant. "This is for the conference room," she said, grinning. "The one we're naming the Fortress?" I teased. "Obviously, because this time no one gets to knock it down from the inside." We laughed, but behind the laugh was something else, something we didn't need to name. I looked around and saw a future built from something stronger than forgiveness. I saw boundaries, respected, held, and never again negotiated. When the ink dried on the ownership papers, I didn't celebrate. There was no party, no champagne cork popping, no dramatic Instagram post captioned, "She did it." I just sat at my desk, my real desk, in the real office that now carried my name, and stared at the soft glow of the afternoon sun hitting the windows. It felt quiet, not the silence of isolation, the silence of clarity. I didn't feel powerful. I felt grounded. That was new. The first few weeks were a whirlwind. Clients returning, teams being restructured, the board shifting under my control. I hired back people who had resigned under Olivia's rule. I met with every department, not to lecture, but to listen. Not out of obligation, but because I wanted to understand how to rebuild this company into something that didn't just survive, but felt human. Prescott Holdings rejoined immediately. Their confidence in me was public and unapologetic. The ripple effect was massive. Within days, former partners called. By week 3, we had doubled our active portfolio. But more than the numbers, what I cared about was the tone. There were no more whispered meetings, no more fake praise, no more leaders hoarding power to cover their insecurities. I set the tone from the top. No fear, no pretending, no family branding if the inside didn't match. We held space for honest conversations. We built flex schedules. We added mental health coverage and wellness hours. People laughed in the halls again, not the nervous laughter of employees trying to survive, but real full-bellied joy. Once, I passed 2 junior analysts in the elevator, cracking up over a presentation blooper reel they had made. They looked startled when they saw me. One of them started to stammer an apology. I smiled and said, "Send it to me, I could use a laugh." That moment stuck with me, because once upon a time, I would have been the one apologizing. But now I didn't lead from fear. I led from something quieter, conviction, not performance. Still, after the office closed and the meetings stopped, the real work began. Because no title, no signature, no strategic plan could erase the ache that lived under my skin. It came at night, in the pauses between tasks, in the first 5 seconds after I woke up, when I didn't know whether to check my phone or just breathe. So I started walking, slowly, with no podcast in my ears, no destination, just me and the sidewalk. At first it felt awkward. My mind kept trying to multitask, but over time I stopped reaching for noise. I let the quiet speak. Some nights I walked past familiar houses, parks, intersections. Others I let myself get lost in new blocks. There was something powerful about not needing to know exactly where I was going. Back home, I opened a blank notebook. No prompts, no goals, just pages. I started journaling again, not like I did in school, where I tried to sound wise. This was messy, raw, boring at times. I wrote about the guilt I didn't want to feel but still carried. About the memory of hearing Olivia's name on the press release and feeling like my heart had been vacuumed out of my chest. I wrote about Dad's voice, about Mom's half-apologies, about how being the strong one always meant swallowing your feelings so others could be comfortable. I wrote about how tired I was of being comfortable for everyone else. I started therapy again, a different kind this time. Not fix-me therapy, but walk-with-me therapy. I didn't go to unpack trauma in a blaze. I went to lay bricks, one small moment at a time. Some sessions I just sat in silence. Others I cried so much my therapist handed me a box of tissues before I even opened my mouth. Once she asked me, "When was the last time you did something that didn't make sense to anyone but you?" I couldn't answer, so I started painting, not well, abstract stuff that probably looked like a toddler's fever dream. But that wasn't the point. The point was my hands got messy and I didn't care. That, in itself, felt like a revolution. One Saturday, I woke up early and made tea. The sun was rising outside my apartment window. There was a warmth in the air that hadn't been there in months. I sat on my balcony with a brush in one hand and a ceramic mug in the other. And for the first time in maybe a decade, I wasn't running from anything. I wasn't chasing anyone's approval. I wasn't checking emails at dawn or worrying what my father thought. I was just here, whole. I wrote that word in my journal that night, whole, and then underneath it, not perfect, not over it, just no longer bleeding. It wasn't a cinematic breakthrough. There was no movie music playing, just the quiet click of a pen and the soft hum of someone upstairs vacuuming. But to me, it felt like the start of a life I chose. not one I inherited or survived or had to constantly fix. One I was finally building, one quiet day at a time. It wasn't a grand moment. There was no spotlight, no slow-motion epiphany. It was just an ordinary night. Takeout containers stacked in the middle of Sophia's coffee table. A candle burning too low. Isabel pouring tea like she owned the whole world. I don't remember what we were laughing about. Probably something dumb, like the fact that Sophia had tried to microwave an avocado. But I do remember the feeling. That precise, sharp warmth in my chest. Safe, solid, known. I glanced up and caught the scene in full. 3 women, messy hair, bare feet, talking over each other. And I thought, this is it. This is home. It didn't come with a family crest or Sunday dinners that made you anxious. It came with space, with presence, with the quiet knowing that you don't have to be perfect to be loved. They didn't ask for explanations when I cried halfway through a story about nothing. They didn't try to fix me when I said I wasn't okay. They simply stayed. Sophia was the fire, blunt and fierce, with a laugh that could punch through any silence. Isabel was the ocean, steady, deep, always listening between the lines. Together, they didn't just fill the gap my family left, they rewrote the definition. They became my proof that blood is not the only way love runs. One night after Isabel left, Sophia and I stayed on the balcony long after the tea went cold. "Did you ever think it would feel this still?" I asked. She looked up at the stars, then back at me. "No, but I always hoped for it." I nodded, fingers wrapped around my mug. "It's not what I imagined family would look like." "It's better," she said, "because we built it." That word, built. It settled into my bones like truth. And maybe that's why I didn't flinch when the invitation came. A wedding. Emily, my cousin on Dad's side. An event dripping with Sterling DNA. The kind of event where I'd be whispered about, smiled at too widely, asked questions that were really statements. I almost threw it away. But something told me, go, not for them, for you. So I did. I didn't go to prove anything. Not to show how well I'm doing. Not to play the gracious, evolved daughter. I went to witness how far I'd come. I wore a navy blue dress, tailored but soft, hair in a low knot, no sharp heels, just flats, comfortable, grounded. I arrived late on purpose. I didn't want the preamble. Inside, it was exactly as I expected. Crisp linens, a string quartet playing something old, distant relatives pretending to be closer than they ever were. And yet, I felt no panic, no tightness in my throat. I was just a guest at table 9, alone, and fine with it. I sipped sparkling water, ate 3 of the past hors d'oeuvres, laughed, genuinely, at a joke from someone I went to camp with when we were 12. Then I saw her, my mother. She approached slowly, unsure. "Vivian," she said. I turned, met her eyes. "Hi." She looked me over, scanning like a security checkpoint. "You look, well?" "I am," I said. A beat passed. 2. "We've been hearing about your work. Prescott, the rebrand. Everyone says it's impressive." I nodded. "Thank you." Silence. "I hope you're happy," she added, softer. "I am." More silence. She didn't ask to sit. I didn't offer. There was nothing unkind in that exchange, just a quiet recognition that whatever bridge had existed once, it was now a dock, and I had sailed away. A few minutes later, I caught sight of Olivia across the room. Her dress was perfect, her makeup flawless. Our eyes met briefly. She blinked first. No words, no smirks, no fake smiles. And that was enough. Because the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And I didn't hate them anymore. I didn't feel the urge to prove or explain or teach. I had nothing to reclaim from them. I finished my drink, slipped out before dessert, walked alone under the city lights. The air was cool, and I could hear the sound of traffic humming beneath the concrete. Back home, I kicked off my shoes, microwaved leftover noodles, and curled into the couch. I didn't think about the awkward smiles or the half apologies that never came. I thought about Sophia's dumb avocado, about Isabel's almond tart, and I whispered, "Thank God for the ones who stayed. Not the ones who were supposed to, the ones who chose to." Sometimes I still catch myself waiting for the next blow. A voice saying, "Don't get too comfortable." A headline calling it luck. A lingering doubt asking, was it really worth it? Old habits die loud, but now when those thoughts creep in, I have louder ones, like the sound of my own footsteps on the pavement during morning walks, like Isabel's dry sarcasm on speakerphone, like the soft Sophia hums when I'm talking too fast, reminding me to breathe. There's no dramatic music here, no montage, just me, living my life, quietly and completely. I used to think closure would come wrapped in some big apology, a tearful reunion, a family dinner where everyone finally saw me. But closure, I've learned, isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like not replying to a message. Sometimes it looks like choosing silence when you know your truth doesn't need a spotlight. Closure isn't their sorry. It's your decision to stop bleeding where you were never bandaged. These days, I still work hard, but not to prove anything. I speak on panels now, not just about marketing, but about boundaries, about burnout, about being the daughter who didn't stay small just to keep the peace. And I tell the truth, not the pretty one, the real one. The truth that sometimes healing means letting people misunderstand you forever. The truth that forgiveness isn't always reconciliation. The truth that strength isn't silence. It's choosing to speak and walk away. On weekends, I teach a mentorship circle for young women in business. We meet in a small co-working space with uneven chairs and too much light. They bring coffee and anxiety. I bring the reminder that they don't have to earn their humanity through performance. One of them asked me once, "How do you stay so sure of yourself?" I laughed because I don't. But I told her this. I stopped looking for peace in places that only gave me pain. And that made room for everything else. Now peace looks like Sophia, dancing barefoot in my kitchen. It looks like the email from Prescott's CEO that ends with "Thank you for making us better." It looks like my reflection in the mirror, not flawless but steady. And it feels like this. No tightness in my chest, no weight on my shoulders, just me, enough without asking. Some nights I think about my younger self, the one who kept it together too well, the one who wrote speeches in her head she never gave, the one who looked around the dinner table and felt invisible. She deserved more. She deserved softness. She deserved space to mess up and still be loved. She didn't get that, so I gave it to the woman she became. I stopped asking for rooms to accept me. I built new ones with walls of clarity, windows of grace, doors that close without slamming. People ask me what success looks like now. It's not the office, not the deals, not the headlines. It's this, walking into my home alone and not feeling lonely. Saying no and not needing to explain. Spending a Sunday doing absolutely nothing and knowing that doesn't make me lazy, just whole. It's knowing that I have nothing to prove to people who only ever saw what they wanted. And it's knowing that love isn't earned by bending. It's found in standing still and being chosen anyway. So here's what I'll leave you with. If your family never saw you, Build a life that makes you visible to yourself. If your voice was silenced, sing loudly to an audience of one, you. If you've spent years shrinking to be digestible, know this: you were never too much. You were never too complicated. You were simply around people who preferred quiet over truth. You don't need permission to exist fully. You don't need anyone's approval to rest. And you sure as hell don't need to stay small to be safe. Close the door on what broke you, and open the windows to what heals you. Let the light in. If this story reminded you of something you've lived through, a moment you felt invisible, overlooked, or underestimated by your own family, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. You don't need to explain everything. Just say, "I've been there." Because sometimes healing starts when someone else says, "Me too." And if you found strength in this story, subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to remember they're not alone.